He was a really interesting historical personality. I've painted his portrait once before. I didn't love it, and so I'm doing it again for my Founding Fathers collection, which will be released this year as limited edition reproductions. So as I've been painting the Founding Fathers for that collection, I've been listening to audiobook biographies about the person I've been painting. So I've done Washington, I've done Franklin, I've done Jefferson, and now I'm doing Hamilton again. And part of what's interesting is the intelligence, the collective intelligence of these guys. Jefferson was a certifiable genius, Franklin was a certifiable genius, Hamilton was. And according to one study, Washington may have been the most, had the highest IQ of all of them by like a lot.
Wow.
Most people don't know how intelligent he was. It's not really focused on that way in history with him. And it is, a speculative study after the fact. Mm-hmm. So who knows how they determined that or would prove that or whatever, but that was their conclusion. However, they tried to measure intelligence and make estimates about the IQs of the Founding Fathers. But Hamilton I found to be a particularly interesting personality because he was an absolute unvarnished genius. He was the smartest one in the room in nearly any room he was ever in. But he had what seemed to me to be a fatal flaw with that. He was, as I said, the smartest one in the room in nearly any room he was ever in. He seemed to feel as if that should be enough. Like, you should do what I tell you because I am clearly the smartest one here. And even when that's true, people don't like that. People don't like being reminded of that. And so even if you're the smartest one in the room, if you're a little too casual about pointing out that you're the smartest one in the room, people will resist you. And I think Hamilton suffered from that dilemma.
No one likes him a little.
Yeah, even when they're right. Sometimes especially when they're right.
Yes.
But it was an interesting clash of these intelligences because like Hamilton and Jefferson did not like each other at all, and their feud was seriously bitter. Jefferson was also a super genius. And going through both of their biographies, I can say with the benefit of hindsight, I can see how they were both right. Even when they were at odds. You're like, yeah, you know what? You're both kind of right. And so what do you do with this? So how do you chart a path forward when two opposing viewpoints are both really legitimate or really reasonable? And as public-spirited and self-sacrificing as the founders were, they were still human beings and their egos still got involved. And at what point are we arguing over rightness versus just needing to be right to satisfy your ego? So next I'll be doing James Madison, and then John Adams will be the 7th in my Founding Fathers collection. And that'll be that. I'll tell you something else, though. In our current super contentious political landscape,
Mm.
Learning history has been a great comfort and reassurance to me, because when you dig into the history of the country from even before we were an official country, you realize things such as Congress has always been super corrupt, mostly useless, super slow. Culturally speaking, we've always been on the verge of flying apart at the seams. We get closer to it from time to time, like right now, during the Civil War, during the 1960s. At each of those points in our history, people were seriously concerned that the country might end. And there was a genuine possibility that it might. And yet it hasn't. We've managed to carry on, carry forward, and hold it together. And that has given me a certain amount of comfort and reassurance in the face of the doomsayers. It's like, you know what? This has kind of always been the way it has been in this country. We're really good at existing on the edge of collapse and flying apart at the seams. Like Washington's biography, man, I'll tell you what, all the horrible things that they've done to, tried to do and said about Donald Trump. If you knew about the things that Benjamin Franklin Gates said about George Washington during his presidency, you'd realize, you know what? This has kind of always been what we do in this country. Man, it's just really remarkable, because you learn in school, if you learn any history at all, you get the sense that Washington was this super revered, practically flawless leader, and you can certainly make some case for that. I mean, he did voluntarily give up the presidency, even though it was offered to him for life. And that set a really important precedent. That might have been the greatest thing he ever did in terms of setting a precedent for a young nation. But there were still like super critics, violent opposition, intense hatred, even for George Washington during his time. And the things that Jefferson and Hamilton and Adams said about each other privately and leaked to the press to say about each other, anonymously say about each other publicly. I mean, politics
They were all
is...
friends.
No.
Oh.
They were certainly not. In some cases, or at certain times, they were intensely bitter enemies. And, in spite of all that, look at what they pulled off. Look at what they achieved. It's just nothing short of miraculous. I mean, Hamilton was at the center of the first major infidelity scandal in our history.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He very foolishly got involved in an extramarital affair. Turned out to be a very treacherous woman who had a partner who were blackmailing him. And it was also very confusing because, he and his wife were so genuinely in love with each other. She was away for a long absence, and the woman he became involved with was for all intents and purposes, a professional seducer for creating blackmail schemes. But you would think somebody with his intelligence would be smart enough to not do something like that. And yet, there he went. And paid the blackmail for quite a long time to avoid a scandal, and the scandal eventually came out anyway. It's just like human drama. Humans being humans. It's one thing we can never quite get away from, just people being people.
So when it got out anyway, what happened with him and his wife?
Well, they stayed together, and she was deeply embarrassed, of course. And his public service in public career was severely damaged. His reputation was severely damaged, as you might expect. And his ambitions, like he did, I think, want to become president in his turn. And that scandal ended that possibility. But he remained politically active and relevant. I mean, he was one of the main co-authors of the Federalist Papers, and he created our financial system, decimalized coinage. That was one of his inventions. He created the Treasury. He was the first Secretary of the Treasury under Washington. He's the one who recognized that the government taking on the debt of the nation would put them in the best negotiating position internationally for obtaining credit, which we were going to desperately need to move forward and build a country. We're going to have to be able to get international loans from other nations. And so he figured out how to leverage debt in order to get credit. I don't quite understand it. It's been a while since I went through his biography, and I've never been a numbers guy. I joked last time that I paint pictures because I can't do math, but which is pretty nearly true. But Hamilton was a math guy and a finance genius. And he figured out how to get us on the path to national solvency and to start creating, the money we would need to expand, develop infrastructure, all of those social needs. It was all him, or very largely him. But he also kind of was at the center of the perpetual debate that we have in this country over the size and strength of the federal government. He was more on the side of strong federal government, where Jefferson was on the side of absolute minimalist federal government. And we've been kind of swinging back and forth between those two poles ever since, because neither one is clearly 100% right or 100% wrong. It's like there are pros and cons to both. And it's kind of like an ongoing, unfolding experiment, really.